Hey there, my name is Drew Nikonowicz, and I am one of the artists exhibited in On Earth, the exhibition at Foam. In the exhibition, I have my project titled This World and Others Like It, and I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about that project. So, first things first, there are two kinds of images in my project. There are large format analog photographs, 4x5 sheet film, and I run a hybrid process with this half of the project. So I shoot analog, I process the film, and then I scan it and I print digitally. The other half of the project is computer generated photographs. And so these are images that I'm making using mapping software on my computer. The process that I usually use to make this work is I will randomly generate a landscape inside of this mapping software and then navigate it the way you might navigate a park or a sort of physical landscape or a video game. And so that exploration component of the image making process for these computer generated photographs is very important to the work. All of the images in the project are one of these two kinds of images. There's not ever any compositing that's happening, and so you can know when you're looking at the work that it's always one of these kinds of images or the other, never a sort of mixture between the two. Now, that being said, there are a lot of images in the project which kind of blur the lines between these two kinds of images. There are instances of photographing my computer screen or small things that I'm doing like that sort of make it feel like maybe it's one kind of image when in fact it's the other kind. I would consider myself a very omnivorous image maker, and so in the project you'll see a lot of different kinds of images. There's not just one kind of photograph made 60 times, but instead I like to think that I'm looking at a subject and I'm photographing it in every different kind of way possible. So you'll not only see line of sight photographs of the landscape, but you'll also see studio landscape extractions, photographs of rocks, photographs of things that I'm sculpting in my studio to be photographed, and a myriad of different kinds of images in this way. Additionally, there's also a portion of the project where I'm actually making photographs of things related to photography. 4x5 negatives, darkroom tools and darkroom pieces of plexiglass and these sorts of things. And part of this interest in looking inward at my own practice as a photographer and putting that into this project is I see photography as a metaphor or a stand-in for technology at large. And by photographing photography, if you will, I'm sort of looking at these implements as a way to suggest and remind the viewer that photography, like everything, is a constructed experience. And with photography, what that means is the edges of the photograph are cropped and they're selected by me, the photographer, or whoever the image maker is. And that selection process, that cropping process, is incredibly important to the way that you view a photograph. Similarly, at a park, for example, a trail is blazed, and that is the path that you take through that park. And so someone has decided, likely for logistical purposes, but regardless, they've decided how you will experience that space. And so there's a correlation between all of these different kinds of constructed experiences that we can have, in that they all teach you how to view and experience that something. And that construction is often hidden beneath multiple layers of abstraction and something that gets lost in translation. And that component of our experience of worlds, both physical and virtual, is an incredibly important component in understanding how and why they sort of work and function the ways that they do. Looking at all of these things, thinking about technology and our relationship to it, is ultimately my way of thinking about what it means to be an explorer in the 21st century, which is ultimately the the crux of my work. And so by photographing line of sight, real landscapes here on Earth, thinking about these similarities between that and these virtual spaces that I can construct, and thinking about their relationship to things like Curiosity rover on Mars and these other images that we see of places that we physically cannot occupy, that is all sort of wrapped up into this question of what does it mean to explore in a world where there are so many different ways to explore. Another part of the work that you'll see is that all of the images are black and white, and they all sort of share a visual language. And that's really important to the work because I want you as a viewer to experience the project holistically. Part of being an omnivorous image maker and thinking about photography in this way is I'm very interested in the aggregate of images. And so it's not necessarily about individual photographs that create a large project. I really want the viewing experience of the work to be one of multiple images and their relationships that are being formed between them. And so the exhibition layout is really important to the work. So what you'll see if you have the fortune to visit the On Earth exhibition at Foam is a really incredible instance of that. I think that the show that we put together there does a really wonderful job of this. It allows the images, because they're shown in a grid, to form relationships between each other, and those relationships that start to form are incredibly important to sort of complicating and thinking about the narrative of exploring through all these different kinds of worlds, if you will. This is part of why they have a shared visual language and there's not a clear separation between the computer-generated photographs and the analog photographs. To take that further, as much as something like a photograph of fingerprints on a phone screen seems to suggest this very measurable surface that separates the world out here, if you will, to the worlds in there, inside of technology, what I hope the work does, especially when viewing it in an exhibition like this, is suggest a much more subtle and hard to detect gradient between these different kinds of experience and these different ways that we move around the world, both physically and virtually. I really hope that you have an opportunity to see On Earth at Foam. It's an incredible exhibition full of really, really wonderful artists. Thanks so much for tuning into this, and I hope to see you guys sometime soon. See you later.